All right, so last time we made this bottle, so it's about leather hard. So if we look at it there, right, and so I can handle it, it is a little bit soft. I like to trim these a little softer. Why? It's because they're so tall, when you're trimming them, they want to tip over much easier than a bowl, for example. So if these get too hard, they're a real pain to trim. Now, it's already come off the bat. So here I'm going to first, though, deal with some of this part up here, because this part, as a beginner or people who don't often get bottles correctly, or if you don't throw bottles that much, this is the hardest part to get right, is up in here, this shoulder, right? And there's some tricks that we can do to get this to look a little better. So I can recenter this. So we'll do this we can center this. I'll just show you first. So I'm tap centering, and I will center it to the place I want to work on. So if you look really closely here, you'll see how there's a bump here as it comes up. You see how there's a little bit of a bump here and it drops back down. Now, I could have fixed that while I was throwing it, but then I wouldn't have anything to fix right now for you. So what we're going to do here is I'm going to center it to that right there, that part right there. And then what we're going to do here is, so then I would trim this right here just like this. But part of this project today is I want to show you, I would then put clay down here and hold it while I trimmed it, right? Does that make sense how that would work? And that would trim this shoulder part to make it even. Now, what I'm going to show you now is, instead of doing it that way, let's get out our fancy pants Griffin grip, because this is something I haven't formally did a recording for during class. So our Griffin grip, we're keeping it still as if it were new in the box. So this is the Griffin grip, not the first generation, but more like a second generation model. Comes in this cardboard box. We open it up, boop, boop, boop. That's the main mechanism there. It has 3 channels. We'll look at that in a second. And then underneath, dun, 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 are all the attachments. Look at all those attachments. So if we wanted to hold something that's taller, we would want to use something like this. And these have little wings. If we want to hold something that's really flat to the wheel, we would use these guys here. And you'll get the idea as soon as I attach these guys on. So maybe for the first part, we'll use these little wings here, okay? And then we'll switch it out to these taller wings for the second part. All right, so I'm going to set this aside. So how does this work, and why is it awesome? Well, it fits these pinholes here. Pins fit into these holes here on the bottom, and you can see pinhole. I guess we should show you here, pinhole, pinhole, pinhole. So then what I do is I just flip this bad boy down onto the pinhole. Then I have to roll this all the way back, right? Clunk, clunk. And then I get to drop these little babies, and these have a little notch in them. And so let's bring this in close, so you can see me push it into that notchiness right there. That drops into that notch there. And then I will roll it, and I'll drop this guy into this notch here. It's important that this has a spun all the way this way. And then I'll drop this guy into this notch here. And then you will see that they should start sliding close. This one's having some issues. Let me see if we can fix that. Huh. There. Oh, that one wasn't all the way engaged. So now we'll put it back down, see if we can get this to re-engage. Come on. There. So now you can see them sliding inward, except that one got left behind. Let's try again. This one got left behind there. There we go. So you see how they can close in on themselves, right? Let's see here. Oh, we have the wrong, what's going on here? Oh, I see. So you can see how if I hold this, they slide inward, and that will capture the pot by rotating this. You see how they go outward, right? Like that. And then that's about how wide they can go. And then I'm going to put my pot in the middle of this, and this will capture the pot, right? So put it kind of in the middle, and those little pads will slide in. And then I got to make sure it's in the middle, and those pads will touch the pot and hold the pot mostly securely. You guys see that? Now, it's mostly securely, meaning that it's better than, I think, than using clay blobs? Because the clay blobs are way down here. Can I use a chuck like this? Of course I can, right? And I could fit it in a chuck, but it's probably best to use this for taller things because this is more active. It's pushing against there like that. Now, what else do we need to do? Then, once I get it captured and it's tight in there, I want to pull this little tab up, beep, and that supposedly locks them in place. There, so you see how the bottle is not quite 100% centered? That's one of the problems with this device, is sometimes your piece has to be already centered on the thing. Because what do I mean by that, John? You're being a little bit confusing. I don't understand. Well, what this means is, like, it is capturing down here. If this part isn't centered to this part up here, this part will act off center. Now, is that a big deal? No, because what I can do is, as I'm working with this, I can cycle around with this with the rhythm of the piece, right? So what do I want to do? There's just a little bit of a bump here. You see that? Where did that bump come from? It came from when I was reaching down with the stick, right? And I was going inside with the stick and pushing out. I was too aggressive right near the end, and I pushed this out. It would have been better if I had pushed this back in right away, but I just didn't do it then. And I left it on purpose, even though I didn't tell you, I left it on purpose so that we would have something to do now. Oftentimes I find that it's not good to make everything look perfect all the time because you as an artist, as a potter, don't see how to fix things, right? That will happen in your work, right? So here, there's a bump here, so I'm going to trim this bump out. I'll just start with this guy here. I could do that. I'm trimming very lightly, or dun, 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 I could switch to one of these guys here, the Sureform, and do that. You see that? And then there isn't much there, right? But there is a limit to how much you can trim through. What is it? Remember, you just trim through to the other side. That's not good, right? So here, I'm mostly getting there. You can see it didn't take much. I'm getting there closer. I'll trim a little bit more down here. And you will know by experience, right, how much you can trim off. You'll just start to get it. I thought I brought a metal rib over, but I don't see it anymore. Oh, here it is. So now once I start getting close, you see how it's already closer? It's maybe, I can just tell by the feel here, I still just need to do a little bit there. So what I could do here is when I start getting close, I can start using the metal rib to trim. So I'll hold this, I'll flex this metal rib like that, and then I will just start trimming it like that. And you'll see clay start falling away. It's a little bit in the shadow. So what does that do? Why did I switch from this guy and this guy to the metal rib? Well, these guys, when they trim, they leave a little flat spot, right? This trims this in a line, basically, and makes a flat spot. And then I always, like, no matter how good I am, it's going to be a little bit of a flat spot. Same thing with this one. This one's even worse because it leaves that Sureform texture behind. So what we do with this guy here is by flexing it over a little bit, it will actually trim a curve into the pot and gets me a little bit closer. The problem with this rib system is that it is, it's not, you can't trim that much clay off at a time with these guys. Like if you really need to trim off a lot, don't start here, right? The other thing is that this edge here can get really sharp because I'm pushing against here, right? I am wearing down that clay and it can get razor sharp along here. So never run your finger across there. You'll see the way how I scoop off the clay, right? So I'm gonna trim way over here so you can kind of see it, I guess. There we go. So I go down, I'm trim, trimmy, trim, trim, trimmy, trim, trim, trimmy, trim, trim. And you can see all the lines here, the dark and light lines. The light parts are where the clay is coming off. The light parts are where the clay is higher, and then the brown, the darker spots are the places where the clay is recessed a little bit. Now, I am definitely getting down into an area where I probably didn't need to do much, right? These throwing lines down here are almost imperceptible, but there's just a little, you see how, if you look at that curve, I don't know what's the best way. You can see how that curve now is just much more free-flowy with the rest of the bottle. I think I need to do just a little bit more like right in here. So I'll use this guy now to do that because I'm getting close. Now you see that I'm pushing down with my other hand, right? So why am I doing that? I find that when I'm pushing here aggressively, that the pot wants to flip off, right? Wants to flip out of this thing. So if I push a little bit from this side, one, that helps the pot from jumping out. Also allows me to kind of, with both of these hands, I'm kind of pushing the pot downward, right? So that it is, it just doesn't want to leap out of this thing. So here, you see, so I'm pushing, doing a counter push. This hand is just resting here. Also, if the pot jumps away, right, which it can just jump right out of, I can grab it with both my hands really quickly, right? So it's almost there. I think it's almost there. So now I'm trying to really kind of bob and weave with the pot a little bit. There we go. Oh, that's feeling really good, right? You see how when we look at that form now, when I feel it, there's nothing going on. There's a little bit of a bump here. I'm going to try to take care of that. All right, so now we're halfway, almost there. We can polish this up to make it look just as smooth as when we threw it, or even better by getting a thing of water, which I'm getting, and I'll get a little sponge over here. Right, so I got a little bit of water and a sponge, and then what I'm going to do here is just wet the pot down just a little bit here. Let's get this focused in. There we go. Right, so I wet it down a little. While it's spinning, I'll wet this place down. Right, I'm not trying to make water run down. Right, and then I'll use the same metal rib and I'll lay it flat against here, and I can smooth it out really good. Right, because I went through all the work to make it smooth to begin with, now when I smooth this out, it will look like I threw it. So you see how that is starting to really look thrown again. So that's good. So that's done. I fixed the major part. You could work the whole side if you want, this part, but you want to minimize how much work you do there. All right, so that part's done. Let's take this off. Let me see if this will work. So this guy, we're going to flip this guy over into here, but you see how these little guys are too low, right? They are just not going to cut it. So we are going to see if we can get the Griffin grip to work with the tallest ones. I don't know. I've never tried to use a Griffin grip with this tall a neck of things. So let's see here. We'll get out the Griffin grip. We'll put these guys away back in their little slot. And we're going to try it with the tallest ones. I'm suspicious that these taller guys are not. All right, so these tall guys are not going to be tall enough for this, because if you look here and then there, this tall guy is only going to hit that neck. So this will still be really wobbly. I would need it to be up in here, right? And that needs to be considerably longer. We do have another Griffin grip that would work with this, but it's really complicated to set up, and we're not going to show you that today. Meaning also that it's not set up for this wheel either. So we'll put these guys away. Put this guy away, and then we'll go back to a regular bat, and you get to see me use a regular chuck for this. Let me see here. So how do we use a regular chuck? Can somebody get me some clay? Do I have any clay? Just a couple wads. All right, so here we go. I have my chuck. What's going to happen is I want to center this chuck. Now, if your chuck is a little bit, not goopy clay, something regular clay. All right, it can be reclaimed clay. So here, I want to center this chuck to the top of the inside of this. So I'm centering that. Not goopy clay, regular clay. Yeah, regular clay. Like, is that regular? I see a bag over there. Can you grab me that bag? All right, so here I want to center that, and then I'm going to flip this baby over, because we can't trim this bottle just sitting on its neck on the wheel. It will just be so tippy. So this acts as a new base. I need one that's long enough. That's good, perfect. I need one that's long enough here so that this neck will drop in there. Now, next thing I have to do, so this is going to require me to back my camera way away from here, right? So the next thing I need to do is I need to see, because the way you put the bottle in makes a difference. Because if you put the bottle in, let's just do it way off center like that, the bottle is tilted that way a lot. So you can see how it's just really evil looking. So the next thing we do is we want to make sure this is flat with the wheel head. So let's see if we can do that. There is a bubble level thing floating around somewhere. I didn't bring it out because I was hoping I could get away with this whole thing from using the... So it's still oscillating around a little bit. Getting closer. Wobble. So I'm trying to level this guy out here. See, I'm getting a little bit closer and closer each time. Let's change the angle of this a little bit so you can see better. Going on here. So this I'm trying to get level so it's not so right there. So I need to tip it this way. All right, so that's pretty good. And then what I'll do is I'll recenter this whole thing, right? So recenter, it's pretty well centered, so it might wobble. So it looks like it needs to go a little bit that way. All right, so then I will mush some clay down here, all the way down here at the base. I am suspicious that this bottle's not gonna wanna stay seated in here, that I might have to pull it out in a minute and reseat this bottle in this chuck, because I wasn't thinking, I didn't really plan ahead appropriately, and you'll see the thing I need to do to get it seat better. All right, so this, I just need to trim a foot on here. So what am I going to try to do? I'm going to try to, when I make these with the understanding that I need to trim off some of this extra clay to continue this curve around here. So let's get this in a good position for you guys to see what's going on. Come on. Right there. All right, so I'm going to first start just by trimming some of this away. So I start by using the sure form because that allows me to just trim more relaxed. You also notice I'm using my hand on the other side again to keep the bottle from jumping out. And if I feel like it's going to jump out, I can even move my finger over and push a little bit down from the top too. That allows me to be a little bit more aggressive. How is this important to do? A little bit, because otherwise you can't be very aggressive. So you see, I'm just removing all that extra clay. It's a little bit like trimming a bowl, right? Because if this bottle ended here, right, it'd be a bowl. Right? They just have a curvature on the inside. So ideally, just like when we're trimming a regular bowl, I'm trying to match the curve from the inside to the outside. Here we go. So this takes a little while because it's so tall. If I push too aggressively, this whole bottle will just jump out of here because it's a bottle sitting in a chuck that's sitting on the wheel, right? Everything is more delicate. That's why you should do these when your clay is a little bit wetter than normal. So I'm getting there slowly, and now I have to start thinking about how big I want the foot to be, right? So I'm thinking a little bit more. And then it's got knocked off a little bit off center. I can see it oscillating around a little because I'm just being too aggressive. All right, so now we'll switch to maybe this tool here, and we'll just start trimming the foot in. There we go. So I'm starting to make this concave a little bit so I can have a foot there. All right, so now I start to have to make some choices, right? So there's a little bit of a bump here I have to trim off, but this is still sticking out way too far too. So I'll spend some time trimming this because I would love it if this is one continuous curve into there, right? So there's a lot of personal choices going on here, and you would have to decide for yourself what those choices are, right? Like if you're... So it's very odd because I'm lefty. I almost do all my trimming with my left hand, but this is one instance where I always use my right hand because my left hand is on the other side holding the pot down, right? If I do lefty, I just couldn't handle, I don't know how I would do it. It'd be very weird, right? So I always do this, even though I do almost all my trimming lefty because I'm a left-handed person for this sort of stuff, I taught myself righty for this. And I never thought about it till right now, right? I just didn't think it was a problem. Now that I'm thinking about it, I'm going to screw it up. So I'm starting to travel down here, right? And you can still see that bump like right there, right? It's still like bloop, bloop out. So I still got to trim some of that off. I'm going to start leaning over and getting a look at it now for real. This got all clogged up. We'll flip this over, see if the other side's sharper. There we go. So I want to trim that so it's a nice and beautiful curve going all the way around. Feeling better about it. There's a little bit of a bump down here, so I could come down in here and trim out some of the easy irregularities too if I wanted to. So let's go for it. Right, you see that, how I'm trying to trim out anything that I think, right, because I have some, I know that I have some thickness in the wall, right? So ideally, right, you wouldn't have to do this much trimming. But we left it a little thick so that you guys could see it, right? Because as beginners, you got to do probably a lot of these steps. So you see how that curve now is starting to look more continuously up and down. I'm going to address the foot a little bit before I come back and fix this up, right? The outside of the foot. So there's a number of choices I could do here. One thing that I have a great opportunity to have this long sweeping curve into here. I could put like a regular foot that I would do on a bowl, but maybe we could do a foot that just S curves back, has a long S curve, kind of come, and then just makes a sweeping turn up into the foot, like whoosh, right? So let's do that. And luckily I have this big chubby trimming part. I could use this big chubby trimming curve here to start that curve and go up a little bit. Now I'm lefty, right? So let's talk about leftiness and rightiness and how I'm actually doing this. If you notice that my left hand is always touching the tool that's in my right hand. You guys, if you guys haven't seen that yet, watch that carefully. There's almost, I mean, I sometimes do this, but when I'm getting down the details, my right hand is kind of clumsy at this, just like how if you're a righty, your left hand for this work would almost be useless, right? But if you trained yourself, you can do it. But my left hand is still better. If you watch carefully, my left hand is always touching my right hand. And so psychologically in my brain, I make it feel like I trick myself into thinking that my left hand is doing all the steering, right? My left hand is driving the right hand. The right hand's just there to hold steady. The left hand is actually controlling the tool in and out pressure. This right hand is doing all the pressure and all that, but I'm tricked myself into that. So if you watch, you see my lefty hand is always touching my right hand a little bit. It really helps out me psychologically. And it's just something I had to consciously choose to do. All right, so there, I'm beginning to get that curve. I want to curve into there. Let's do a little bit of fix up here, and then we'll do the inside of the foot. There we go. So I'm pretty happy with the way that looks now. Let's trim the inside of the foot. So what am I going to do there? I wish I had a better tool for this. So here I'm just going to draw a line about where I think the inside of the foot might be. So there. So that's about where I'm thinking the inside of the foot should be. So I'm going to come back through and start trimming now from the middle. So this is another place where the pot can jump out. Right? Woo! Right? Now, if you do not have to trim feet on these because this is not an important part, no one's picking up your vases all the time and looking at them. Pitcher or something, right, that's always being poured, right? I think you need to address the foot more carefully because that foot is going to get exposed, right, a lot when people are pouring. Wouldn't it be cool if it had some sort of message or something on there, like, you're awesome, or this pitcher's or something, right, that when people tip it upwards, they get to see that something, show off on those. For this, I don't know, like, go ahead, do something. Now I have to be really careful because this is another time when the pot will want to jump out of me. So I have to take it really easy. You see with my left hand touching my right hand, I'm pushing down with my left hand as well, right, to put some downward force on the pot. They make these special spinner tools that you can hold down. I just can't get used to them. I've tried to trim with them. I just never could get used to that. There's a bunch of other things that you could do for free. Meaning if you could take remember like bottles, like Coca-Cola bottles, Pepsi bottles have that little metal cap. You can put that in the middle and that's really slick. You could dab a little bit of water in here and that makes that area really slick and you can hold it down that way. I just never got used to it. And I don't think using that spinner really helps you make a better foot, right? It doesn't improve the way your foot looks. It just makes it a little bit easier for you to do that. Right, so you notice I'm just trimming out from the middle, but I didn't go all the way out. That's just a little habit I have because I'm very worried that it's going to flip out. Now that I got that down the level I want, I'm going to attack this last little bit of area. There's no reason for that other than, I don't know, it's just something I do. You see that you can't be, so if this was a bowl, I would already be done with a foot because you can be super aggressive with a bowl, so the bowl's much lower. Oh, shoot. All right, that's actually good because you get to see how we fix it now, right? I knocked it off. All you have to do is get it back. All right, just keep tipping it around. Now, there's a couple things I didn't do. Let's just pull it off since it came off. I could have stuck clay around here, so let's do it. One other trick you can do is to help it stick, because this is a piece of bisqueware, and you could use anything. I've used little buckets. You could use anything, but since this is bisqueware and it's really slippery, right? You can make like little pads of clay and round them over like that and put them on there, and this will help. You can even do it this way. Some people have done it this way where they go over the top like that. And you want at least 3 pads of clay, because with just 2, the pot will rattle back and forth in there. Like that. I like them this way, going that way instead. So we'll do one more that way. So we're turning this into a teaching opportunity. It's actually good to see how you recover from these moments, right? Then I put this down into those pads of clay. Bloop. And I can even push it down a little bit. So now it's way off, so I have to spend some time adjusting. Right? As long as those pads of clay stay in there, right, I have to spend some time adjusting. And this could take a while, but oh, that's so close. Nope, just made it worse. All right, so it's level, but it's not centered, right? That makes sense? It feels level, like, oh, wait a minute. All right, you just go a little bit that way. So first thing I'm doing is leveling it out, so this is not. All right, it needs to go a little bit that way. All right, so now I'll try to center it. So what am I going to do is I'm going to center this whole chuck with this in it now. This is where tap centering comes in really handy. So why do I have to do this? Well, hold on. Now we have to tip this back this way. So if I knew I was going to use the chuck, I would have started with these little things in there, because that wet clay really sticks down to stuff. All right, so center. We're close. All right, we'll just go with that. So then we stick it down. So I just don't care where the chuck is, right now. If it's centered, off center, all I care is if this part is centered. And it's mostly centered enough. Now we get to go again. These pieces of clay will help it stick better down. The interface between this clay and the chuck and the pot is better. All right, so let's just switch to this tool here for trimming. Oh, I was using, oh man. All right, I don't like that. Because of the way I hold the tool, I only use that tool for lefty. I just realized, so I'll go back to this. Was this the tool I was using right before it came off? I guess so. And if you can't see what I'm doing, just holler. Meaning if I, there we go. So that was actually a good thing for you to see. So I'm getting close, right? And then what I'm going to do, wow, what's going on? It's still way off center. We're going to recenter this one more time, be more aggressive. That's it. All right. So that's tap centering. Tap centering is where you can just hit the clay, hit the object as it's spinning. All right, so now we're gonna finish it up, and then we're gonna rib the outside. So I'm going to finish up the outside of this. This inside foot's looking okay. Maybe a little bit more work here. I'm going lefty because it's really fine what I'm trying to do. I just have better feel for with my left hand. We're almost there. We're almost there. All right, so now I'll come back and finish the outside of this foot. Trim that round. Woohoo! Trim that round. So it's good. And then trim this round a little bit so it has this nice roundedness so it doesn't chip and stuff. All right, so now there's some trimming lines still here on the outside. Let's fix those up, right? If you look here, there's lots of trimming lines. We're just gonna do just like we did on the top side of the pot. We're gonna flex this over because I trimmed it mostly round. And why do I wait for this? Why? Is because I could, when I'm touching and fiddling around with this, I could mess up this beautiful surface that I'm making. Right, and I'm trimming right now, trimming off the high points, so I'm trying to make it one beautiful continuous curve. I can even go all the way down to here, right? And if you look here, I trimmed up right into that space, so I could make this whole thing super beautiful by doing this. You can see clay falling off as I'm using it. You can see that I'm slowly getting it to more like a continuous curve. So when it comes off the wheel the first time when I'm throwing it doesn't have to be perfect, as long as I can get in there and come back here and do this part, right? Does that make sense? As you get better, you won't have to do this as much, and then one day if you make a lot of bottles, one day you'll get to the point where you'll get ready to rib, and you're like, well, dude, there's nothing to rib. It already looks good, right? And that's such a beautiful day. All right, so then the last thing we do is just with the water again, we will wet it down, and then I'll smooth out the whole thing. Wet it down all the way down there. We'll even smooth out the foot. We'll start up here and smooth that out really good, just even with my fingers, and then we'll come back here and we'll smooth out this whole side. There we go. It'll look really beautiful. The water just softens up the surface so it's more accepting to smoothing out with the rib. Well, I guess we're done because it just popped off. Right, so here we'll look at it, and then this is always a moment of truth because you were trimming it upside down, right? When I was trimming it right side up, I could kind of see the whole thing, right? Now I was trimming it like this and I couldn't see it, so I was trying to guess what the rest of it looked like, right? So I don't know sometimes. So then you just got to pop it out, and since it already just jumped out, I was almost done anyways, and then let's back this away so we get a much better look at this. Right? Is this what you wanted, right? You can look at it. So let's talk about what's going on here, weightiness, or just how it looks, right? This looks really beautiful. Down here, it just feels, for me, it's a little bit wider or portlier, more portly down here. That is a thing. It's not like a thing, but you see how there's just seems to be just a little bit more mass on the bottom. Right? So what does that kind of look like? A little bit, not really, but a little bit like an eggplant or something, right? Eggplant has more mass on one side than the other, even though it's very subtle. It's way more subtle than an eggplant, right? If you were looking for symmetrical, right, where this is the same as this and this is a little bit too much, I would maybe stick it back on the wheel and just trim a little bit more mass off down here. It's not that much. If you don't care, you don't have to do anything. Right? That makes sense. And it's like, well, I'm just going to take this because it looks awesome. And of course, sign your name on the bottom. All right? Any questions?